We are doing a follow up with an amazing guest that I had about a month ago. Her name is Amy Andersen, and she's the founder and CEO of Linx Dating. And we had such a great conversation. And she was, when I was talking to her, I realized she was filled with all my guests are filled with wisdom, but she had a different angle as far as growing your business, which is so valuable. So I invited Amy to come back and chat with us further about how do we build a strong business based on what has worked well for Amy. So Amy, thank you for coming back and sharing all your knowledge with us.
Of course, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
So last time when we talked about your journey of building your business. You had mentioned that you didn't make any money. You didn't charge anyone for 3 years, but that was part of your business plan, quite frankly. So as you were doing that, there were some other things that you were doing to build your business and to really kind of test things out. So let's dive into that. And tell us, how did you make sure that your formula was strong?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's really about understanding the marketplace and understanding exactly your demographic, right? Understanding if there's different competitors. And sometimes people say there's no competitors with what I'm trying to do. But the truth is, usually there are, and that's a good thing. That is a positive thing. It means that there's, a healthy competition, right, in the marketplace, in a thriving, hopefully, economy. So don't be detracted or deterred from that. It's a good thing. So I think understanding kind of exactly what you're going to do. One of my biggest pieces of advice for entrepreneurs that are really hoping to start a business or are in the infancy stages of running their business is really remembering to start local. I think that that is something that I always have done and I still do to this day, even 20 years in to running the business, which is out of Silicon Valley, California. What's particularly interesting to me is I feel like I've only scratched the surface of potential clients locally. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs will think global instead of local. Global is exciting, right? And there's a lot of potential there. But I think you have to start in your vicinity, in a particular kind of silo geographically to validate what you're trying to do. And once you validate that, once you have some customers and have gotten that off the ground and feel good about that, and maybe some money's coming in, all that important stuff, then you can begin thinking about different markets. But stick with one at first versus thinking too expansive, because if you think too expansive, you could get in over your head.
I agree with that on many levels. One is with the marketing. If you're going to do pay per click or anything else, it's a lot cheaper and safer to start locally
Yes.
first. Also, when I was looking at your website and I was reading about some of the VIP men that you had in there, I was realizing what they were looking for with women seemed much different up here up Northern California. I'm up here too, versus Southern California.
Yes.
So, the different areas throughout the United States, through obviously globally, there's a lot of nuances.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And really understanding kind of the psychodemographics of different regions. I mean, they can be vastly different, right? And you might think your product or what you're trying to do is going to appeal to everybody, but you really need to understand your core demographic. And Linx has a very specific demographic, and that has never deviated. Now, what has evolved over the years is that I am working with clients in different regions, but it's the same demographic in terms of the baseline being an educated professional who's desirous of commitment. That baseline has maintained consistency, but we've seen evolutions of, an appeal in different regions geographically, but it's the same type of clientele, which is important, who's seeking the same product, which is a match and ultimately a marriage.
And are you now located globally as well?
So no.
Yeah.
So
Not
my
yet.
business, my office is in Silicon Valley, but I do represent clients on a global level. But generally speaking, they have some sort of tie to the San Francisco Bay Area, Sometimes it's an investment tie, something that they're invested in, one of their kind of personal investments or a professional investment, or they sit on a particular board seat, if they're at a kind of C-suite level executive. So sometimes they have certain ties, or maybe it's the university, Stanford or Berkeley that's in the Bay Area, or Davis, there's some sort of tie, generally speaking, but I am kind of situated myself, my business in the Bay Area.
Okay, I understand. So also when you are starting your business, as we all, at some point we all started somewhere.
Right.
Who did you go to for advice to run your ideas? You said that you had the boyfriend who was not quite on board, so I'm guessing he wasn't the best target market to test with. But how did you do that? Who did you go talk to where you got true feedback that you could trust and that you felt confident with?
Yes. Well, I went to my community. I went to my friend group and I pulled all of my single friends and I said, I have this idea. And here's in a nutshell what it is. And if you're single, like, would you be a customer? Would you sign up for free? Right? Would you be comfortable and confident referring your friends, opening up your Rolodex of friends? Right? So my network could grow. And that was for me one of the really important cornerstones of starting my business, was really enlisting the help of my local community and my friend group, and my family too. I was asking them and they're like, okay. I mean, my parents, it was interesting because my parents, obviously different generation, they said, sweetie, I don't think you need to do this. Like, why can't people meet in a bar or a coffee shop? And I'm like, it's a little challenging these days, especially when you're working a lot and all the websites and no vetting. But back to kind of that core group of friends was really instrumental in bouncing my ideas off, because they also gave me really useful feedback and ideas that, and again, as an entrepreneur, you can decide to kind of collect those ideas as different data points or kind of tweak your concept based on what you're hearing. But I think a great piece of advice for your listeners is really tapping into your friend group and your community. It could be your congregation you go to. It could be your the school where your kids are at, in school. It could be your friend group, your yoga studio, whatever it is. That is valuable, because people generally, I think, want to help. Now, again, keep in mind, there's always going to be naysayers, but you got to maintain that kind of strong core and that fire in your belly, and have faith in yourself.
What about, so I agree, it's great to go get feedback. Sometimes, however, when we're going to our friends and our family, they love us. So they might skew their answers a little bit and say things to make us happy, right? Because that's what they want. So how did you frame your questions? Was this ever something that you had to think about when you were asking these questions? Were there ways that you framed the questions so that you got a more reliable answer, not just, Amy, we think this is fabulous because we love you and we know you're genius.
Right.
Was there any areas there that you worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just asking for really direct feedback and just being brutally honest, kind of asking them to remove kind of the friendship out of it and really look at it more objectively as a potential business. Because at the time I was working in finance, so I had a job. I was kind of tinkering with this concept to start Linx, after work hours, and pulling my friends and sending emails out. And then it really kind of, I had enough kind of information from my community that I felt like compelled, okay, I'm really ready now. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And it was a really risky thing because, again, I had a job and I had an income coming in, and my boss at the time was about to kind of pass the baton to our team in private client services. And it could have been a long career, a cushy, safe job. But the honest truth, I wasn't happy. And it was a job that was not fulfilling. So I got the courage up. I walked into my boss's office in December of 2003 and said, I'm going to end this and I'm going to become a professional matchmaker. And I think he thought I was completely crazy, but it was like, it was the best decision ever. But that took, again, the research, talking to my friends, and also saving my money too. That was a really important thing because I had no financing, nothing.
We have to hit on that for a second because I have so many clients, especially recently, because of all the tech layoffs. I
Yes.
have a lot of clients that are coming to me that are 40, 50, even 60, and they've been in corporate all their life. They did what they thought they were supposed to do, right? They had the cushy job, like you mentioned, not without stress, but it was a job that they felt like they should be doing. Now, fast forward, and they're at this next stage in their life. And my gosh, you should hear what they say. They are depressed.
Mm.
Some of them have gotten into some pretty bad habits because they've been masking that unhappiness. So thank you so much for bringing that. So I really want to hit on that point and drive it home because we have one life. And
Yes.
so many of us have these big dreams and we hold back from them because we feel like someone else is watching and this is what we should be doing to please who? Please them, not us. And so
Mm.
we really have to become aware of that. So what you talked about is key. And you also talked about being really careful. You
Mhm.
didn't just go out and splash money all over. You were very controlled and disciplined.
Yes, that the control part was very important. And I'm still very, like, all things considered, I'm still very disciplined in how I run my business. It's still local. I'm still very, like, kind of thrift about certain expenses. I'm like, okay, should I fly economy? Should I go business? I mean, really aware of my spending habits, what's coming in, what's going out, really thinking through that. And particularly, I mean, for the first decade of my business, like very, very, very spendthrift and really aware of that. Before starting my business, really, really ensuring that I had a safety net there, that I had some savings, and it wasn't a lot. I mean, it's probably under $5,000, but I took a big risk, especially quitting that job. But to your point, I wasn't happy. Every day when I got to my job, my anxiety was crazy. Like my heart would be racing. I would, be so like almost like claustrophobic at work, because it wasn't who I was. I just wasn't happy. And I realized that there was so much pressure to kind of perform in an environment that was not me. I couldn't thrive. And frankly, I was not myself. I was developing unhealthy habits of, like, going out after work and drinking with my peers, like probably too much, and staying out late, in a very unhealthy dynamic and lifestyle. Then waking up at the crack of dawn, feeling myself with a ton of coffee and sitting at a desk miserable. And so that's really, that to me really added to the fire of, like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I have enough information, and I'm so, again, that fire was like, and it still burns in me. It's like, I knew it was there, and I wasn't going to, like, dim that light. I was like, we're going to do this, and we're going to, like, go forward. And it's just been the greatest decision ever, truly.
The women who I talk to who have really thrived, they burn that bridge, right? So
Mhm.
there's no going back,
Right.
right? And so it's interesting to hear you say that. Now, I want to ask you this. You came from the finance
Mhm.
side of the world. You worked in that for a while. Do you feel that that experience helped you approach the way that you started this business, some of those disciplines that you learned? Can you dive into that a little bit?
I think what helped me coming out of the finance world was what I was doing at my job. So I was cold calling. I was cold calling high net worth individuals, about 200 to 300 cold calls a day, dialing for dollars, one person after another, very monotonous. But it gave me a thick skin. It gave me a really thick skin because there's a lot of rejection, and you can't take it personally. Like, that's life, it's business, right? Even though in that moment you're like, oh my gosh, and people yelling at me. Like, this is during the Enron scandal, the Martha Stewart scandal, and a lot of these potential, clients or customers were not wanting to hear from me. And I was trying to be really sweet about things, but I realized it's a dog eats dog, world out there, and you gotta not take things personally. So for me, I developed a thick skin, of also not accepting, sometimes if they're saying no. I learned some different communication skills of trying to kind of, open up opportunities. Okay, well, you said no, but would you be just open to having a conversation with my boss, just a coffee, right? In seeing if I could kind of change the narrative and dynamic. And that takes some confidence, right? But again, it's kind of like you live one life, just try, and you might realize it's a technique that doesn't work for you, or you might realize it's the greatest thing ever, right? So I think that was like my skill set that I extracted from that experience professionally.
Having run businesses for almost 3 decades now, that is the one thing that I have learned is that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to have that thick skin. I don't care what your business is. You really have to, because you're going to get punched in the gut, knocked out at the knees. And if you aren't prepared for it and you can't rebound from it, one, you have to make sure that whatever you're doing, you are in absolute alignment with and you're passionate about. Because when that happens, when you get that punch in your gut, 10 times in a row or more, it is hard to get up. But if you're passionate and you are in alignment with what you're creating, it makes it so that you do get up every time. And so there's a lot of little nuggets that you have shared that go into any business.
Absolutely. And I think also listen to your customer, right? Your customer could very well be unhappy one day. And remember, try not to take it personally. It's business, right? So I reflect back on the young entrepreneur where I remember one conversation I had when I was first starting my business, and somebody had kind of acted up on a date and they, were not necessarily behaving in the right way. And I didn't approach it in a professional way. I remember yelling at that person on the phone, like just berating them. And I look back at that kind of young business owner thinking I would never do that today. Like I would have kind of removed the emotion out of it, probably waited 24 to 48 hours before I respond instead of kind of acting just with that emotion and making it a situation that's just frankly not professional, right? So I think that that's hard too, right? Because there's always going to be people that are not satisfied. And sometimes when you're running your business, you just have to cut your losses, right? You just have to realize, okay, it's okay. It just didn't work out with that person. Therefore, I'm going to refund them, or I'm going to send them a new product or whatever it is, right? And try to make them happy because reputation is everything, right? And that is your most precious asset, I think, maintaining that. Without that, you're really nothing.
Always keeping a vision of the bigger picture, right? As you're growing your business, it can be scary when you have someone who is wanting their money back or they're not happy and you're just trying to figure it out. But you mentioned two things. One, take care of the client. If they're unhappy, cut them loose and try to minimize the damage, right? No matter what it is, there just are those clients. And also you mentioned that what was it that you mentioned? You talked about waiting overnight to respond. Don't react, respond. That I think that's one of those things, Amy, that as we get older, we get wiser, right? When I look back when I owned a business when I was in my 20s, I cringe sometimes at the way that some of the things, I mean, quite frankly, it's embarrassing now, but the way that I dealt with employees
Oh,
and with certain clients. Now I look back and I have the wisdom of all these years and think, oh my gosh, why didn't someone tell me not to do that? Why did I take so long to figure that out?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. I've dealt with situations where I reacted just on impulse and emotion when I really should have waited. And that kind of kicked me in the butt. And the customer really reacted in a very negative way. And we dealt with it, like we hashed it out years later. We, faced each other. I expressed my, just kind of rationale as to why I did that. And the customer reacted and really kind of putting it out there, and we came to a happy medium ground. But reflecting back, there has been situations where it's like you can react, but it's like that's what my dad has always said. He's hammered into me. He's like, if something's upsetting you or somebody did something, whether it's in a professional or personal, romantic context or whatever it is, like you can write that email, but don't hit send till you really like sleep on it. Sleep on it a couple of days. And if you still feel the same way, then revisit it, maybe tone it down a little bit, but don't hit send, quite yet. And that's, I think, a really valuable, but like really important piece of advice for anybody, right?
It is. It's something that if you are a responder type of person or a reactionary kind of person, write it down, put it on your computer to make sure it's that reminder when you're in those moments of anger or frustration to just pause and not take the action that you want to take, because most likely it is going to change. Like you said, whether it's a day, 2 days, whatever it is, but just don't hit send.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Amy. We could talk forever because there are so many key. I mean, now I'm like, we should probably talk about employees and staffing and all that, but I know that you're valuable. So thank you so much for coming back and sharing your wisdom with us. And for those who were not here the first time, where can people go to find out more about you?
Absolutely. So we have a content website with a lot of really great information. The website is www.linxdating.com. That's LINXDATING.com.
If you are looking for love and you want a long-term mature relationship, go check it out because it is it's a much fresher and I felt like so much healthier type of platform. But that's also coming from someone who's been with the same person for 36 years. So what do I know? But I thought it was beautiful and I do encourage you to go there. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you. So nice chatting.
To be the best, you need to play with the best. You might not have your own personal high-level circle of women yet, but you can hang with us on the Female Millionaire Show. I'm Midori, serial entrepreneur for over 25 years, and I interview badass female founders and cut through to what you really need to know. So in 20 minutes, you have what can take years to learn. If you're wanting to play bigger, come play with us. Join the female entrepreneur revolution today. Cheers.